Today from the Global Lane, American Deep State, Fantasy or Washington Reality. What you need to know about impeachment, Ukraine, and investigating the investigators. Hong Kong erupts in more violence. Tiananmen-style massacre or student surrender ahead. As Christmas approaches, Americans think recession is coming. Are their fears warranted? And Coca-Cola's latest commercial, soft drink promotion or transgender advocacy. And it's all right here on the Global Lane. Police say they've removed and arrested 1,100 people in and around Hong Kong's Polytechnic University. It was the scene this week of a standoff between pro-democracy protesters and riot police. At one point, students set a university building ablaze, and police say they confiscated more than 3,900 petrol bombs that were being manufactured by the students at the university. Joining us with the latest on the Hong Kong protests is someone who knows the pro-democracy movement well. He's film producer Andrew Duncan. Last month, he helped hundreds of pro-Hong Kong democracy activists protest the NBA's China policy at a Nets-Raptors game. Mr. Duncan was co-producer of the Netflix documentary Joshua Wong, Teenager versus Superpower. Andrew, thanks for joining us. So it seems like 6 months of protests now are entering a dangerous stage, and Beijing has moved troops into Hong Kong. China's Global Times newspaper says the Chinese government should use snipers to shut down violent protesters. Your thoughts on this, please?
I think it's very alarming, especially that we're in the midst of the administration's trying to close a trade deal that after the WTO and Beijing's inability to stick to the terms of that, and now that the joint resolution between Hong Kong and London is being fundamentally broken, I find it very troublesome and awful. And I think Americans need to know that these are not anti-government protesters, as I've seen on some news websites as recently as this morning. These are pro-democracy protesters that are trying to fight against the Chinese Communist Party, and churches and mosques have been victimized by the fighting, and as they have on the mainland. So it's a terribly sad day, frankly.
A Hong Kong police spokesman said on Sunday he called the rioters people who are intent to murder police officers at all costs.
I do think that people should look at the history, and by watching the film that I made with my team, I think they can see that this started peacefully a long time ago, and I think that there's people are feeling desperate in Hong Kong and that they have nothing to lose. And I am not an advocate of the violence, and I know that Joshua Wong, who I know, and Nathan Law, who I know, and others are not advocates of violence. But things have been brought to desperate times, sometimes have required desperate measures in democratic battles throughout history, including our own in Boston and other places. But it's terrible to see, and it's most disturbing because Beijing is not holding up to the joint resolution, and how can we do a trade deal with people that won't live up to the joint resolution, the Chinese Communist Party, and also, in the meantime, have Uyghurs, almost 3 million people, according to the Pentagon, in concentration camps in mainland China?
Well, you mentioned the violence. You know, most Americans probably support the goals of the pro-democracy activists, but not the violent actions of some. We're seeing Molotov cocktails being made and used against police vehicles, and one protester shot an arrow into the leg of a police officer. But do you think these tactics will cause the pro-democracy activists to lose Western support?
I think there's a risk of that. And I spoke to a family member who lives in Asia earlier today who relayed just that. I do think that the violence is problematic, but I think it should be also noted that a police officer, there's been a lot of police brutality and police violence. Emergency medical workers were actually handcuffed after quietly protesting, and they're not being allowed to demonstrate, which is their right under the joint resolution. And there was obviously a police officer at point-blank range shot a unarmed man in the stomach last week. So violence is never good, and it's indefensible on both sides. But I don't think the Global Times is handling things in a mature way either. And I'd also like to note that it's my understanding that water cannons went off with chemicals in the water that were causing burns onto protesters. So it's a very difficult situation, and in the fog of war, it's very difficult to assign blame in the fog of violence. It's violent. They should stop being violent, but Beijing also needs to back off and take troops out.
Okay, now, what do you think will happen next? We could be heading to a bloody Tiananmen Square type crackdown here as things escalate.
Correct. It's very alarming and concerning, And I think that that's why I think the United States should put the trade talks on hold. There shouldn't be a trade deal under the circumstances that are going on right now. I've said before, the NBA should not be in business with people that run concentration camps. The United States government should not be negotiating trade deals with people who are running concentration camps. But with that said, I think that there needs to be a cooling off period. And I think we need to hear from the President of the United States. We've heard very vociferously from Secretary Pompeo and Vice President Pence, who have been consistent in their positions. But we've yet to hear from the President of the United States, who needs to firmly speak out in defense of democracy, in my opinion, and firmly speak out in support of Hong Kong's rights under the joint resolution.
Okay, things that can be done by this government. Hong Kong pro-democracy activists. Producer Andrew Duncan, thank you for joining us to provide those insights.
Thank you for having me.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN News Watch.
Thanks for joining us.
Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN News Watch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Yes, right on time.
From Superbook.
Pepper's Pizza Palace is donating pizza for everyone today.
Wait. I have big plans today.
Trust in God even when times are tough. He has a plan for your life.
Hey, we're gonna be late for the grand opening.
My parents want me to help with this outreach thing, feeding the community. What am I supposed to do here? Superbook!
Join the Superbook Club and get Superbook The Birth of Moses, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25.
Pharaoh ordered all newborn Hebrew boys thrown into the Nile River, and I have a 3-month-old brother.
The Birth of Moses. Yours for a gift of only $25.
What will you do the next time the soldiers come? I do not know, but I trust God has a plan for all of us.
Superbook Club members, free streaming for seasons 1, 2, and 3 is now available.
American Deep State, fantasy advanced only by conspiracy theorists or Washington reality. At a recent Federalist Society dinner in our nation's capital, Attorney General William Barr said an avalanche of subpoenas and constant attempts to derail Trump administration appointments only serve to incapacitate the executive branch. He stopped short of calling what is happening in Washington a political coup, but he suggested forces are engaged in a war to cripple by any means necessary a duly elected government.
Now, resistance is the language used to describe insurgency against rule imposed by an occupying military power. It obviously connotes that the government is not legitimate. This is a very dangerous and indeed incendiary notion to import into the politics of a democratic republic.
Joining us is former CIA analyst, author, and adjunct professor at Georgetown University, Dr. Michael Schur. Dr. Schur, what do you think of the Attorney General's comments?
I think Mr. Barr is exactly right, sir. And I would, it may be a coup, but it seems to me it's more the case that it's an insurrection. The federal government, at least the executive branch, is being denied the ability to execute its responsibilities, whether it's here in Washington or in places like Seattle and Portland, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, where under the Supremacy Clause, Washington is very clearly responsible for immigration. There is much more disruption, much more insurrection in this country than Lincoln faced until the Confederates fired at Fort Sumter. And so it's really a staggering position to be again in this position almost 160 years later.
Yes, I mean, to have the Attorney General of the United States make these type of comments, he must be gravely concerned. Now, he says there's a resistance that has a strategy and is using every tool available to sabotage the executive branch. I'm assuming this includes impeachment. So what do you think of the hearings in the House?
What we've heard so far in these sessions has been, I'm very offended because the president didn't listen to my advice. And certainly in ignorance, both in the Congress and in the testimony. When the Constitution says bribery, the founders were talking about the president accepting bribes.
Do you think there was any bribery of Ukraine on the part of this president? How about Joe and Hunter Biden and Burisma Holdings?
Well, you know, so that's the point, I think. If the president of the United States could grab something out of the Ukraine in return for our money that was really worth something to the United States, I think the American people as a whole would be very happy with that. And if it happened to involve Biden and his son, and they were actually criminally involved, the president would be praised, I would think, for preventing someone like him from having a chance to get into the White House. When I say him, I mean Joe Biden. So this has been the way it's been since the American presidency was formed. And what they're doing is, as Mr. Barr said, trying to tear down the institutions of this country. They're not the loyal opposition. They are an infestation of globalists who want to deny nationality to the United States and blend us in with the rest of the world.
The IG's FISA report may be released publicly any day now. So, Michael, what do you expect it'll reveal?
Well, if America is to be, again, a land of rule of law and equality before the law, there'll be suggested indictments for John Brennan, Susan Rice, Clapper, all those FBI characters, Comey and McCabe and Strzok and the rest of them. And also, I would think, clearly Obama is involved in this up to his neck, because clearly this was run from the Oval Office by Barack Obama in an attempt to defeat candidate Trump and an ongoing threat through insurrection or coup. You know, it's up to you to choose the word, since the president was inaugurated.
Now, this all sounds like conspiracy.
Clearly the planning on how to take care of it, the insurance policy, all of that stuff, that's clearly a conspiracy. Sometimes there are conspiracies, sir.
Well, finally, I know you worked at the CIA, so how dangerous is it for the country to have intelligence officials and agents involved in politics, taking sides? And I thought we were all on America's side, or we should be anyway.
You know, sir, I worked there almost 25 years, and I have to say I must have been as naive as the deuce, because I never could believe this, except this could have happened. But clearly, the CIA is in this up to its neck. And John Brennan, who I knew most of my career, I tried to get to talk to the Senate committee before they were going to give him that position. And they didn't want to talk. And so I've written a couple pieces on the blog. John Brennan has only been in this business for himself since he was a young man and came in as a communist sympathizer. I suspect that the agency at this point is facing a very difficult problem, because I would want to, if I was the chief of the CIA at this moment, to get rid of everybody that was employed under the auspices of the two Obama administrations. Because clearly the people who were sent there not to defend the United States, but to tear it down from inside. Mr. President, you have to clean this house. The bureaucracy runs this country, and it's running it according to the dictates of George Soros and other people who are in league with that kind of people. So that kind of person. So I think the CIA needs to be drastically reformed, primarily in the elimination of anyone who came to work there under the Obama administrations.
Well, 3 years in, I guess it's never too late. Okay, Dr. Michael Schur, thank you for sharing your insights.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
Nigerian Christians in
Iran are routinely arrested.
Happily, Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Watch Christian World News, Saturday at 5 p.m. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Some startling new statistics on the home front. In a recent MetLife survey, 51% of American adults believe a recession will occur within a year. Even more astonishing is a few people feel prepared to deal with it. It comes at the same time a Financial Health Network survey shows 70% of Americans say they're struggling financially. Well, Dan Cilia, CEO of Financial Issues Stewardship Ministries, joins us to provide some insights. Dan, always good to see you, but I seem like a broken record here, but because of the MetLife survey, I've got to ask you, is a recession coming? Are the concerns of these Americans warranted?
Yeah, I don't think so, Gary, at all, to tell you the truth. I don't think there's going to be a recession, at least in next year. I mean, it's going to hard to believe that it could even happen next year, to tell you the truth. Of course, we are in a very threatening time globally. There are a lot of geopolitical events and a lot of uncertainty. As I say a lot, an unusual amount of uncertainty. So, of course, any one of those things could break. But purely from a fundamental perspective, when we look at the underlying fundamentals of the economy, there is really no recession in sight.
Okay, Dan, so whether or not we have one, what are some steps that people should be taking to improve their financial health? Because 70% say they're struggling, Dan.
You know what? I saw that survey. I'm not sure where they get to 70% because we have the highest consumer sentiment ever. It is off the charts. It's amazing how strong the balance sheets are in families. Low debt, high income, but more importantly, an incredible amount of confidence in the income and the economy. But I'll say this. One of the things that we absolutely have to be careful for consumers, particularly headed into the Christmas season, we can't get feeling so good, which is the majority of the sentiment right now, so much so that we begin to get in debt. Being out of debt is always going to be one of the best protections that we can have for our well-being in our family. And that's got to be number one. And under any economic condition, we should always be working at getting out of debt and always be conscious of staying out of debt.
Well, we wish our leaders would take that advice from you on Capitol Hill. Record deficit and debt. The China trade talks. It seems like a phase one deal is closed. Then it's not. Trump said some tariff increases on China would be canceled. Now he's saying, well, he may impose tougher ones. What in the world is going on here, Dan?
I'll tell you, I think that we have got to get this phase one deal done, and we've got to get it done very, very soon. I am not sure, Gary, whether this whole phase one, and I didn't feel this way in the beginning, is nothing more than another delay tactic for China, trying to put off the inevitable of maybe more tariffs and further tariffs. I'm not so sure that isn't it. But if we don't get its phase one deal done soon, we're going to be in trouble with China, because it is just a matter of time before President Trump, State Department has already done so, before President Trump has to weigh in on Hong Kong. He has tried to keep it separate from trade, but if the violence escalates, he's going to have to weigh in. And that is not going to do well with China and a trade deal. They are very quickly going to and abruptly stop any more conversation. So this deal has to get done soon if it's going to get done.
Yeah, Tiananmen-style massacre there,
Yes.
everything would go south. So how about domestically? How are the impeachment proceedings affecting the markets? Are investors a bit nervous about that?
No, not at all, Gary. It's not even impacted off. You look at the markets last week during the heart of the impeachment process, when it was started and there was so much rhetoric on it, the markets all went up. Nobody was fazed whatsoever about any of that. Wall Street is very smart. They understand that, first of all, they understand this president is not going to get impeached. And they say, even if he did, worst case scenario is a Mike Pence presidency, and it's going to be business as usual. They're not concerned about impeachment process at all, and it's not going to impact the markets. And I think that has the Democrats very frustrated.
Quickly, Dan, because we're running out of time, what about a Federal Reserve interest rate hike? They cut the rates, and now there's some talk maybe they'll raise them again.
No, there's not going to be a hike at all. I would be very surprised to see a hike right now this year. I don't think there's going to be any cuts, any raises for the rest of the year. I think worst case scenario is we get another cut more than a hike in February, but nothing this year either way. The markets were not good enough sustainably last week to warrant any rate hikes, and we're not going to see a cut.
Dan Cilia, have a great Thanksgiving. And a robust economy or not, we know there's still a lot of good things going on right here, that God is good here in the USA.
Amen. Great Thanksgiving to you, Gary. I always appreciate being with you.
Thank you, Dan.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to CBN.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible,
Yes.
Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link, Tuesday nights at 6:30.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Get Protect Your Sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
A new commercial for Sprite soft drinks is making the rounds on social media, and it has many people disgusted and outraged. It shows a girl wrapping her chest and transforming herself into a boy. It also shows a boy dressing up as a girl. Only most girls I know don't actually dress like that. But all of this, rainbow flags, gays, and lesbians, are depicted walking, I guess, to a gay pride rally as their proud parents look on. It happens to the tune of "You'll Never Walk Alone." But folks, this is actually about more than gay pride. It's about transgender advocacy and indoctrination. Yes, encouraging parents to take pride in their children is positive. But Coke should stick to selling soft drinks. Instead of promoting Sprite, Coke is promoting a dangerous cultural feel-good ideology. And ads like this one, along with Hollywood's influence through movies and television shows, have caused the number of gender-confused children to skyrocket in America. Doctors are prescribing hormone treatments, puberty blockers, and surgeries as never before. Children are impressionable. All of this is helping to promote a sudden and dangerous cultural transformation. The idea that people, even minors, can change their gender at will, if it feels right at the time, do it. Doctors say they're now seeing a rise in cases of what they call rapid onset gender dysphoria in American children, especially in young girls. Johns Hopkins psychiatrist Paul McHugh says what these kids really need is psychiatric care, because no solid research backs pediatric transgender medicine.
I'm of a great fear that we're in the midst of a political rather than a medical enterprise here.
Dr. McHugh says it's an enterprise that will likely backfire and cause hardship for patients who eventually realize what happened to them because they tried to change their sex. Some scarred and sterile transgenders are already calling for justice.
Eventually the truth will out, and we'll know, and I think we'll know tragically, that many of these children have been cruelly treated.
Advancing the idea that a child can become whatever or whomever they feel they are at any given time leads to gender confusion and serious lifetime consequences. Children, and that includes teens because they've not yet reached adulthood, are not emotionally mature enough to make lifetime decisions like changing their sex. Instead of encouraging American young people to change their gender, why not help them understand who they really are in God, the person God created them to be? Let's help them learn about the purpose He has for their lives. No matter how hard some people may try, hormones and surgeons cannot actually undo what God has done. They cannot actually change a person's biological sex. They may appear or feel like they're the other sex, but they aren't really. That's the real lie that they're living, because doctors aren't God. In Genesis 1:27, we're told, God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. Got that? He created us. We are not the creators. And no matter how hard we may try to be God, we cannot. And we should not advance and embrace a culture that pretends otherwise. Well, that's it from the Global Lane. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, and Twitter. And until next time, be blessed.